A beautiful black woman stood in a 47th floor boardroom in Hong Kong, about to close a $1 billion deal that would change her life forever. She had built her company from nothing. 4 years of sacrifice, 3 months of negotiations, one handshake away from everything she had ever dreamed of. She extended her hand to the British investor across the table. He looked at her hand, then at her face. Then he said the words that would destroy his entire world. "You don't seriously expect me to touch that, do you? Black women must be too dirty for that sort of thing. You people don't wash properly. It's genetic." He smiled. Actually smiled, as if he had just commented on the weather. What he didn't know was that the silent man at the head of the table, the one in the perfect black suit with the scar across his throat, wasn't just an investor. He was Park Jin-woo, the surgeon, head of one of the most powerful criminal organizations in Asia. A man who controlled $50 billion in illegal money. A man who had killed with his own hands. And in 60 seconds, that Korean Mafia boss would make a phone call that would end the racist's life as he knew it. What happened next wasn't just revenge. It was a lesson in power that no one in that room would ever forget. Before we begin this story, comment below where you're watching from and what time it is there. If stories about karma, justice, and hidden truths move you, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. The rain had stopped hours ago, but the glass windows of the Four Seasons boardroom still held tiny droplets that caught the harbor lights like diamonds. It was 10:30 at night in Hong Kong, and most of the financial district had gone dark. But on the 47th floor, in a room that cost more per hour than most people earned in a month, 3 people sat around a marble table that had been quarried in Italy and shipped across the world for no reason other than because it could be. Amada Okonkwo stood by the window, her silhouette sharp against the glittering city below. She wore a charcoal gray suit that had been tailored to perfection, the kind of precision that only came from understanding exactly how the world judged a black woman in spaces like this. Her box braids fell perfectly over her shoulders. 4 years. 4 years building her fintech company from absolutely nothing. 3 months negotiating this single contract. 1 meeting to close $1 billion in funding that would put her on the global map forever. She had every reason to be confident. Her technology was flawless. Her financials were pristine. Her vision was revolutionary. But standing in this room, looking at the men across the table, she felt that old, familiar tightness in her chest. The same tightness her mother had felt. The same tightness her grandmother had felt. The knowledge that no matter how brilliant you were, someone would always find a reason to remind you that you didn't belong. Across the table sat James Harrington III, 52 years old. Gray hair perfectly styled, Savile Row suit that cost more than a car, gold watch that had belonged to his grandfather, who had belonged to that generation of British men who built empires on other people's suffering and called it civilization. James needed this deal desperately. His fund was hemorrhaging money in ways his board didn't know about yet. But he would rather die than let anyone in this room know that. Especially not her. Next to him, David Chen hunched over his laptop, fingers flying across the keyboard, taking notes on everything, saying nothing. 29 years old. Son of immigrants who had sacrificed everything so he could sit in rooms like this. He had learned early that the best way to survive in these spaces was to be invisible, to document everything and judge nothing, to cash the paycheck and ignore what it cost. And at the head of the table, silent as death itself, sat Park Jin-woo. In the financial world, they called him an angel investor. In the real world, the one that mattered, they called him the surgeon. 47 years old. Black three-piece suit without a single wrinkle, a scar across his throat from ear to ear, pale and thin, from the night someone tried to kill him in Busan 24 years ago. He had killed that man with his bare hands. Then he had killed that man's boss. Then he had killed everyone who had given the order. It took him 6 years, but he became the head of the Kumryong organization, the Golden Dragon, one of the 3 most powerful criminal empires in Asia. He controlled 40% of the illegal money that flowed through the continent, casinos in Macau, entertainment clubs in Seoul, real estate in Singapore, technology startups in Hong Kong. All of it a machine designed to turn blood money into clean money. And now he needed Amara's technology to complete the largest laundering operation in the history of organized crime. $50 billion over 5 years, enough to legitimize his empire before he died. Enough to leave his 8-year-old daughter something clean when the leukemia finally took him. Or his enemies did. He watched Amara turn from the window, watched her smile, that professional smile that she had practiced 10,000 times, watched her extend her hand toward Harrington. He saw what was about to happen before it happened. And in that moment, Park Jin-woo made a decision that would destroy one man's life, save another woman's company, and change the future of $3 billion. All because James Harrington III was about to make the last mistake of his life. Amara's hand hung in the air between them. Professional. Polite. The gesture that closed billion-dollar deals in every boardroom, in every city, in every country in the world. James Harrington looked at her hand, then at her face. Then, inexplicably, he looked at Park Jin-woo, as if seeking some kind of masculine solidarity, some unspoken agreement between men of the world. "You don't seriously expect me to touch that, do you?" The words came out casual, almost friendly, as if he were pointing out a typo in a contract or a stain on a tablecloth. Amana's hand stayed extended. Her brain hadn't caught up yet, hadn't processed what she'd just heard. Harrington continued, leaning back in his chair with the comfort of a man who had never been contradicted in his life. "Black women must be too dirty for that sort of thing. You people don't wash properly, do you? It's genetic, really. Nothing personal." He smiled. Actually smiled. David Chen's fingers froze on the keyboard. The cursor blinked on the screen, waiting for words that would never come. He had heard racism before. Microaggressions, coded language, dog whistles. But this was different. This was a man so insulated by privilege, so protected by wealth, so assured of his position in the world, that he said the quiet part out loud and expected everyone to simply agree. Amara slowly pulled her hand back. Something was breaking inside her. Not anger yet, that would come later. Right now, it was hope that was dying. The hope that maybe at this level, in these circles of power, with these sums of money, that racism wouldn't reach her, that she had finally climbed high enough to escape it. She had been so stupidly, desperately wrong. Park Jin-woo had not moved, had not blinked, had not changed expression. But something in the room's temperature dropped 10 degrees. He stood up. The movement was slow, deliberate. The chair made no sound on the Persian rug. He was 6 feet tall, but seemed to fill the entire space. The scar on his neck caught the light as he turned his head toward Harrington. "Mr. Harrington." The voice was quiet, almost gentle. The kind of quiet that made people stop breathing. "Please repeat what you said about Dr. Okonkwo." It wasn't a question. It was a command, delivered in the tone of a surgeon asking for a scalpel. Harrington laughed nervously, tugging at his tie. "I'm sorry?
Look, there's no need to make this awkward. I was simply commenting on cultural differences. In my family, we were raised to believe that certain races have certain essences. Hygiene issues, you understand. Biology. We can sign the papers without all this unnecessary physical contact, can't we? He was still smiling, still certain that reason and civility were on his side. Park walked around the table, each step measured, each footfall silent. Your family. Harrington Capital Partners. Founded 1987. 4.2 billion pounds in assets under management. Offices in London, Dubai, Singapore. He stopped behind Harrington's chair. Also owes $340 million to the Bratva. $89 million to the Sinaloa cartel. $127 million to my organization. The color drained from Harrington's face like water from a broken glass. David Chen closed his laptop slowly. He knew this voice. He had heard stories about what happened after this voice appeared. Stories that circulated in the dark corners of Asian financial circles. Stories about men who disappeared. About debts paid in ways that didn't involve money. About the surgeon earning his name not through healing, but through precision in violence. Park continued, positioning himself between Harrington and the door. This woman built her company from nothing. No family money, no inheritance, no connections. She has a $3 billion contract with the South Korean government for blockchain infrastructure. A $1.8 billion contract with the Central Bank of Nigeria. She has technology that I need to legitimize $50 billion over the next 5 years. He placed both hands on the table, leaning toward Harrington. You are a dead man asking for a last meal. And you just spit in the face of the only cook in the restaurant. The silence that followed was absolute. Even the city outside seemed to hold its breath. Park Jin-woo reached into his jacket. The movement was slow, deliberate, theatrical in its precision. Harrington flinched, actually flinched, as if expecting a weapon. But what emerged was simply a phone. An iPhone without a case. Expensive, but understated, like everything else about the man. He dialed a number. 2 rings. 여보세요, 형님? The Korean flowed smooth and cold. Park spoke slowly enough that everyone in the room understood the tone, even if they couldn't understand the words. Authority. Finality. The voice of a man who gave orders that were never questioned. 런던 계약. 취소해. 지금 당장. London contract. Cancel it. Right now. 모든 빚. 추심팀한테 보내. All the debt. Send it to the collectors. There was a pause. Someone on the other end was speaking. Park listened without expression. 48시간 안에 러시아 놈들한테 알려. 돈 없다고. Within 48 hours, inform the Russians. Tell them he has no way to pay. Another pause. 아니, 살려두지 마. 본보기로 만들어. No, don't leave him alive. Make an example. He hung up. The silence in the room was the silence of a grave being dug. Harrington had gone from pale to gray, the color of a man whose body was starting to understand what his mind refused to accept. That his life, as he had known it, had just ended. That the Russians didn't negotiate. That the cartels didn't forgive. That in 48 hours, men with faces he would never see would come for him in ways he couldn't imagine. Wait. The word came out as a whisper. Wait, please. I didn't mean it. It was misinterpreted. I can explain. I have friends. I have connections. I can make this right. Park raised one hand. Harrington's mouth snapped shut like a puppet whose strings had been cut. Or... Park reached into his inside jacket pocket again. This time he withdrew a folded document. He placed it on the table with the same care a priest might place a Bible on an altar. You sign this now. You transfer 35% of Harrington Capital Partners to Dr. Okonkwo as an emergency strategic investment. She becomes the majority partner. You become her employee. He placed a Mont Blanc pen beside the paper. The pen cost more than most people's monthly rent. It gleamed under the boardroom lights like a surgical instrument. And every time you report to her for the next 10 years, every time you walk into her office, every time you send her an email or attend her meetings, you will remember that a beautiful, brilliant black woman saved your pathetic life and your worthless family name. The emphasis on black hung in the air like smoke. Park leaned closer, his face now inches from Harrington's. The scar on his neck was a white line in the cold light. You will thank her, every single time. Do you understand me? 30 seconds passed. The only sound was Harrington's ragged breathing and the distant hum of the city below. He picked up the pen. His hand shook so violently that the first signature was barely legible. Park waited, patient as death, until all 3 signature lines were filled. Then he took the document, examined it with the careful eye of a man who had reviewed 1,000 contracts in 1,000 shady rooms, folded it precisely, and returned it to his pocket. David Chen. The young lawyer jerked upright in his chair as if electrocuted. You witnessed everything. You are my witness. Tomorrow morning at 9, you will register this at the Hong Kong notary office. Understood?
Yes, sir.
Good. You are fired from working for this piece of garbage. Park gestured at Harrington without looking at him. Starting tomorrow, you work for Dr. Okonkwo. Your salary just tripled. You will be loyal to her. Completely loyal. Because if you are not, I will know. And I will find you. Do you understand?
Yes, sir.
Park finally turned to face Amara. She had been standing motionless through all of it, watching, processing. Part of her was horrified at what she had just witnessed. Part of her was vindicated in ways she would never admit out loud. And part of her, the part that had survived every boardroom where she was the only black face, every pitch meeting where investors looked past her to ask her white CTO questions she had just answered, every conference where someone assumed she was the assistant and not the founder. That part of her felt something dangerous and intoxicating. Justice. Pak Jing-woo walked toward her. He stopped exactly 1 meter away, close enough to speak quietly, far enough to show respect. Dr. Okonkwo. His voice had changed. Not softer, but different. There was something in it now beyond coldness, something almost human. My daughter, Pak Min-so, is 8 years old. She has acute lymphoblastic leukemia. She is in treatment at a hospital in Switzerland. The best doctors in the world are keeping her alive, but they cannot promise me she will see her 10th birthday. He paused. For the first time since entering the room, something that might have been pain crossed his face. I have accumulated a great deal of money in my life. Most of it is soaked in blood. I need to transform that money into something clean before I die. Something my daughter can inherit without inheriting my sins. Something that will take care of her when I am gone, whether from my enemies or from the cancer that is eating her from the inside. Amara found herself holding her breath. You are the only person in the world with both the technology and the moral clarity to do this. The blockchain infrastructure you have built is untraceable, unhackable, and completely legitimate. You can move $50 billion over 5 years and make it clean. Legal, taxed, documented, real. He extended his hand. We will do clean business together. 50-50 partnership. You legitimize my money. I fund your expansion into every market in Asia. Your company becomes worth $10 billion within 3 years. My daughter inherits a technology empire instead of a criminal one. Everyone wins. Amara looked at his hand. The hand of a man who had killed people. The hand of a man who had just destroyed another man's life in under 5 minutes. The hand of a man who ran an empire built on violence and fear and suffering. But also the hand of a father desperately trying to leave his dying child something better than blood money. She looked at Harrington, slumped in his chair, suit soaked with sweat. The man who 10 minutes ago had refused to touch her because of the color of her skin. The man who would now spend the next decade of his life working for her, answering to her, dependent on her mercy. She looked at David Chen, wide-eyed, a witness to everything. A man who had just watched the world reveal itself to be far darker and far stranger than he had ever imagined. And then she looked back at Park Jin-woo, into those dark eyes that had seen terrible things and done worse. Eyes that also held the desperate love of a father who would do anything, become anything, sacrifice anything, to save his child. She took his hand. Let's talk about your daughter, and about leaving the blood in the past where it belongs. Park's face transformed. Not quite a smile, but something close. Something genuine. Relief mixed with respect, mixed with the faint hope of a man who had stopped hoping years ago. Deal. He released her hand and turned toward the door. His footsteps were silent on the carpet. At the threshold, he stopped without turning around. Mr. Harrington, you have 72 hours to relocate to Hong Kong. You will work from Dr. Okonkwo's office, a cubicle without windows. Your new boss expects you Monday morning at 8 o'clock sharp. Do not be late. She does not tolerate lateness. The door closed with a soft click. Harrington put his head in his hands and began to cry. Quiet, broken sobs of a man whose entire world had collapsed in the time it took to make one racist comment. David Chen stared at his laptop screen, his reflection ghostly in the black mirror, wondering what he had just become a part of. And Amara walked to the window, looking out at the lights of Hong Kong spreading below like a sea of stars. She pressed her palm against the cool glass. Somewhere in this city, a little girl was dying. Somewhere, a monster was trying to become human. Somewhere, justice had arrived wearing the wrong face and carrying the wrong weapons. She smiled. For the first time in 4 years of building her company, fighting for respect, climbing the impossible ladder, she smiled a real smile. Not because she had won, but because she had finally found her power. If this story moved you, pause for a moment and reflect. Have you ever been judged by the color of your skin instead of the brilliance of your mind? Have you ever watched someone use privilege as a weapon, only to see karma deliver the justice the system never would? And when power came from an unexpected place to right a terrible wrong, did it make you question where true morality really lives? Share your experiences and feelings in the comments below. We read every single one. And if you believe in stories about dignity, unexpected justice, and the price of prejudice, don't forget to subscribe to the channel.